Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Accuracy in America, brought to you by Accuracy in Academia. This is episode 349, and I am Don Irvine, your host, joined by my co-host, Brian McNichol.
Good morning and hello to everyone who's glad that we're only 2 weeks from baseball start.
Yeah, I almost threw the P's and C's in there, but we can talk about that. We'll get there.
Yeah, it's getting coming.
We're just it's so funny how baseball season just how it just starts coming up on you so quickly after the World Series.
Yeah, and and this year it's like the playoffs of football seem to go on forever. And the college, that's too much college football. I think pretty much everyone, 12 was too many. I think most sentient adults have landed on that conclusion. And it's just to the point, and with the cold and all that stuff, it's just let's go baseball, P's and C's.
Yeah, and to think that they want, there's talk about they want to expand it to 16 or 24. I'm like, don't you think this is enough? I mean,
Yeah,
I'm already. I mean, I love baseball and I love sports, and I know you love sports, but you know, we grew up in a time when the calendar was a lot shorter. I mean, the World Series didn't quite go quite as deep in there because we got extra playoff games. Now the NFL with their schedule, bleeding out, and we don't see the Super Bowl here until till what, February 8th, I guess it is, or
yeah,
something like that. Uh, you know, you just mentioned college football. I mean, that was what, a January New Year's
yeah.
Day
Yeah,
crown.
it should be settled on New Year's Day. Because
Yeah,
the thing that people aren't thinking about on that is the second semester starts mid-January, right? So the guys who were at Indiana and Miami, there could be no portal, right? Because the portal people were all signed. All that was over before they ever got their season done with. And I guess some people are like, well, good, they don't need portal anyway. But it's like there's no off season now because they're right back into, they'll be in spring training here in a few weeks. And, that lasted too long. And it went on, and it's like it got to the point where people didn't realize when the biggest games of the season were even on. Oh, yeah, semifinals. Oh, yeah, really? It's because it went on and on and on. And I think it's a week too many. I think if you went to 8 and it was 8 down to 4, down to 2, down to 1, people would understand that. No buys. You shouldn't be arguing about, who's the 13th best team in the country. Like, who cares who the 13th best team? You got no business playing for the national title any which way if you're 13th, right? It's like the whole idea of Notre Dame making all these arguments and all these people whining about it. It's like, they didn't even win a conference. They didn't even play for a conference championship. They lost 2-3 games, right? You have no right to be in the national championship picture there.
Well, yeah, I mean, the ludicrousy too was just that Duke was in the conversation.
Yeah. They won the conference. They were 7-5 and won the conference.
It's like that should never happen in terms of they shouldn't even be close to getting a sniff of this.
Yeah.
But that's exactly what would happen by expanding the field. Besides the
Right.
fact that you eat up almost all of January, you make an excellent point about the classes and the portal. This is this, right? I mean,
Yeah, that's right.
show me the Benjamin, show me the money. That
Yeah.
this is college football has become a big money sport, and they're wringing everything they can out of it. It's really too bad in that sense. I mean, the players, some of the players are getting paid really well, but this whole thing is just completely distorted, and it takes a lot of the luster off the game that I really loved growing up.
Yeah, me too.
So,
Yeah.
all right. Well, besides college football and besides P's and C's coming up here in a couple of weeks, we had a little bit of a snowstorm here in the DMV. Um, as my wife was saying, I wasn't paying that much attention. I knew the schools were closed Monday and Tuesday. She said here in Montgomery County they're still closed, and I don't know what they're like in Virginia, but apparently Montgomery County has claimed that they have plowed 100% of the streets, but according to very angry people on Nextdoor, that is not the case.
I hear you. Yeah, they got some plowing to do. So we got about 7 or 8 inches, but it's also single digits, right? It's like 7 or 8 degrees. So the snow's not melting. It's not moving 1 inch. It's getting hard to move. In fact, it's getting hard to shovel and whatnot because it's ice. It's not snow. But people got their little paths out. And as long as it stays this cold and it doesn't, melt during the day and then freeze back at night, that's when it really gets slick and dangerous. So right now it's just hard, frozen, just bitterly cold. I was out this morning and it was like 5 degrees.
Yeah, I mean, I was out of my house. I mean, I went to the gym for the first time since Friday. My wife had decided to make breakfast for a bunch of people on Saturday, so I was prohibited from leaving the house for the gym. So in essence, I hadn't been anywhere since Friday, and
Yeah.
I guess I was getting a little cabin fever. My wife finally today, and now that we finally got dug out yesterday, because the ice conditions with the snow just made it really difficult to get that stuff off my driveway. You've been to my house, you've seen my driveway. My kids a few years ago gave me a snow thrower, which is fine for a little bit. If it's snow, it's fine, but the snow and ice, it's just too much for that little battery powered, environmentally friendly thing. And so, it was really pretty useless.
Yeah.
Think about that, folks. What do you do with those battery powered devices that will only go about 20 minutes anyway on a charge to begin with, and you've got a lot of snow?
That's right.
In Montgomery County, like many other jurisdictions, they have this rule in effect, which is like, you must remove the snow, clear your sidewalks, within 24 hours or face a fine of like $50 a day. Now, I noticed that Terry Kibbe, Matt Kibbe's wife, and I think you remember good old Matt.
Yeah.
So they live in D.C., and she posted a picture of Matt had cleared a lot of their area there in D.C. But it just made me think, like, yeah, okay, so D.C. apparently has the same system of where they want to fine you. And what she brought up was like, they want you to clean the sidewalks that you don't own.
Right. That's right. That's right. Put your grill there in the summer and see what your property rights do.
Yeah. Well, I noticed on on Facebook, because Montgomery County, whoever's in charge of their Facebook, they must have posted the whole thing about the sidewalks. I think they just kept refreshing the post or whatever, and the number of comments just kept growing and growing, and they were virtually 99.9% all angry people about, well, when are they going to, what about our streets getting plowed? Do we get a discount on our property taxes? Obviously not. It's like, is this the best Montgomery County can do? Is try to get you to squeal on your neighbor, because it was like, here's the number to call if the sidewalk hasn't been cleared. You can report somebody. It's like, oh, so we're now turning into the surveillance state where we're supposed to report the neighbors for not clearing their sidewalk, particularly in an area where it is just really difficult to do so.
Yeah.
So Bethany Shawn Mandel, she posted that and Anne Arundel, that she noticed that they suspended those rules because of the composition of the ice and snow. And
yeah, I think that's a smart thing to do.
Yeah,
right, because it's really not fair.
Yeah, well, we're living in Montgomery County, so it's like,
yeah, don't worry about fair.
What's fair?
Fair's in August, right?
Yeah. So anyway,
the agricultural fair too. It's not
yeah,
just the fair, yeah. It's the agricultural
fair. I guess the saving grace about all this was that it wasn't 2016 all over again, and we're moving out on the roads. But for anybody, just anywhere you live in the country that gets snow and has snowstorms, just remember that the snow plows can only push the snow and put it in certain places when there's so much snow. And so you're going to get some bottlenecks, and you're going to get narrow lanes or disappearing lanes, right, which is the real danger.
Yeah, my daughter, so she's never driven in snow before. Like, she learned to drive like last summer, so first time around for her, and she's like, the roads are much more narrow. I'm like, yeah, they take a lot of road away from you. It's like, you're in this lane and the lane just ends. I'm like, yeah.
Yeah, and people are trying to calculate some of this as to how to do this. So it's you're kind of at the mercy of the other drivers to make sure that you can actually have an orderly flow when the
Yeah,
lane's narrow, right?
yeah,
And that can be kind of tricky. I was at a light and I was kind of in a slightly narrowed lane, but not by much. And the guy next to me, I noticed as soon as I started to move across the intersection, he wanted to get into that lane, because he was playing the bet that nobody should be in that other lane because it was slightly narrowed. They should all be in the middle lane and then move over. But it wasn't like it was halfway gone. It was like 3 inches.
yeah.
So it's enough that my car could fit in there, and so this becomes a little bit of, can I calculate in my head what the heck is going on here, and stuff like that. But and as you alluded to at the beginning, because it's so darn cold, we're basically in a deep freeze in that sense that we are the temperatures are not getting much above, say, 25 if we're lucky. They're below 10 most, in the early part of the morning. And so we're not getting any melt off. And so this is going to take a while. I forgot. I think we are going to get a day above 32 coming up here, but may not be for several more days. So,
Right. It's
there's
the
a little,
longest, coldest snap in DC in like 135 years. It's really,
wow. Yeah. I'm not surprised. It's just that I feel like we're just kind of stuck,
yeah,
and everything like that. I'm not touching my sidewalk. I'm hoping that I get a little something. If it softens up, I'll try to go out there and do something. But it's like I'm 66 years old. My wife just turned 67. We're kind of like, how much of this do we have to do? I mean, I even arranged with my lawn guy. I said, you know, let me know what you want to charge and tell me what can you come over and do this probably. And he said, well, I'll have to see how much snow falls first. I said, well, that's reasonable, to see how much before you
yeah,
before you tell me. And I waited to hear from him, and I'm like, well, I haven't heard from him. So my wife went out on Monday. I did a little bit on Sunday, but it was just coming down too fast, and it was just
yeah,
and I got cold so fast.
yeah.
So and
'Cause
my
it's
once again, when
cold.
when when you,
Woo.
when you get old like us, you don't want to be out there. You just don't want to risk other conditions.
Right.
So I was out
That's
there
right.
for like 15 minutes. I'm like, no, I'm not doing anymore. We attacked it again on Monday once everything was said and done. And we made some progress, but not enough to get the cars out of the driveway. The county had been by, in the early and later in the morning, and they obviously block you in as they push the snow, to the end of your driveway, and things like that. So we got a little bit there, and I still never heard from the lawn guy, and I'm like, man, what happened to him? But you may have seen the post. Had a guy at church who contacted me out of the blue and said,
Yeah.
hey, if you need help, let me know. And then I said, oh, man, that would be a godsend. And I didn't hear from him. And I'm like, oh, we got a little bit done. And then yesterday he said, hey, if you still need help, I'll send somebody over. And he sent his son and a friend over. And then another, what I call youth leader, came over, and they finished it off and were like, all right, as a reward, my wife makes California roll sushi. And so they all like that. That was their reward for coming out there and helping us,
Okay.
and doing that. And then those guys went off to go to our church because our church has a contract for parking lot, but not for sidewalk. So
Yeah.
members have to go in there and clear sidewalks. So I mean, thinking like that'll be a chore. But
Yeah.
but I love the community and the involvement. I mean, apparently Rockville there's a number you can call for senior citizens and you can get help. But in a storm like this, they can't handle it. There's not enough,
Right.
they don't have enough people to go and help enough people. So I'm glad this is behind us. I'm just concerned about the weekend, but I'm hoping it makes its way to the coast and we get a glancing blow at most.
Right. Me too.
So
Enough is enough.
enough of this.
It doesn't take much for a bunch more days off from school and whatnot, though. So,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, the thing is too, when we were out shoveling, this couple that I know that they're Patriots fans, so they're very happy right now. But they do a lot of walking. They're walking in this weather, and so they're walking down the street because the sidewalks are pretty much blocked. And they says, we're from New England, we hate snow.
yeah. I bet they do. They
Yeah,
see
that's probably
nothing.
why they're here. It's better in general, right? Better than getting 17 inches to 2 feet.
That's
So
right.
there's always the silver lining there somewhere. All right, lots on weather. Uh,
Yep.
moving on to news. Some just so Iran, we've got over what 6,000, maybe 6,200 or more protesters have been killed by the government. Those numbers continue to ratchet up. President Trump is definitely ratcheting things up on his end. I mean, are we about to see some action there? Kind of.
Well, I mean, I think he's still hoping to get out of it without action. But I don't. He may, it may not be avoidable. He's basically down to like, if you think about the Gulf War, right? And Bush told, Hussein, he said, you have 3 days to resign and leave, or we're coming after you. Well, he's not going to resign and leave, right? And that's basically the offer that we've made to the mullahs, right? You have a limited amount of time. I believe what I've heard is Friday. So Trump is. I also wondered about this. So Trump is planning to do that Friday. He's thinking about dropping the 101st Airborne and airdropping them into Minneapolis on Friday. So I'm wondering if like the Epstein files are going to come out on Friday while we're worried about all this other stuff. So, but Friday could be a big news day for us. That's for sure. So, yeah, and I don't know. I'm thinking about this, and I'm thinking that he really doesn't want to have to bomb or anything like that. He doesn't want troops on the ground. But we have moved, a lot of naval assets and whatnot into the Persian Gulf. We're ready to do it if it doesn't go like it's supposed to.
Yeah. I think you're right. I mean, I think he wants to avoid. He wants to get out. He doesn't want to have to go too far. But
and one more thing about that. So it appears to be, like Rich Barris. I don't know if you know his big data polling. He's a pollster, and he's like this. Giving Israel everything it wants is killing Trump in the polls. That's his theory. I'm not sure it's true, and I'm not sure. The logical conclusion then would be, stop giving Israel everything it wants, right? Don't do these things for them. But I don't think there's a conservative coalition if you do that. I mean, what would the me's and you's of the world be supporting? If the Republicans decide or the Trump administration, whoever decides not to support Israel, what is it? What principles? We say, I'm for them because they're for this and the other side is not. What's on our list anymore, right? Because if you're not going to support Israel, I think that the people who've been in this coalition a long time are out. I think it's a new thing, and it's a splintered thing that you'll get beat by organization for a long time.
yeah,
A lot's riding on that. A lot is riding on Minneapolis too.
right.
I mean, if they fold there and they say, okay, troublemakers make enough trouble that we'll just back off. Guess what? You're about to get a lot of troublemakers. Illinois, California, Washington, Seattle, Oregon. In Oregon, it's even more volatile because Republicans could win there, right? I don't know if you saw this. Chris Dudley is running for governor again, former NBA player, who almost won last time. It was like 25,000 votes from winning last time, which is pretty good for. I mean, you think of Oregon as this monolithic leftist state, but he could win. So you're going to get wild reactions to this unless you make a stand in Minnesota.
Yeah, I think abandoning Israel would be a mistake. I mean,
Absolutely.
I think the coalition with MAGA and everything like this is much bigger on the pro side than the anti side. So I think the pollster here in this case he's kind of off track on that. I mean, and we don't. I mean, not that foreign policy plays a big effect on the president's. It tends to come down to economic issues, domestic issues. There's some foreign policy there for people. If you are pro-Israel, you probably are in better shape than if you're not pro-Israel, unless you're in the super blue state or district or whatever. So where you can get away with that. But yeah, I mean, I think yeah, I think he needs to stay firm and stay strong with Israel on this. And he's been a good friend to Israel up to this point in time.
Yeah, there's
It,
stuff in Israel named for him,
yeah, yeah,
not
no, I mean
village and whatnot.
they're probably not done.
Right, that's right.
That's why Gaza's got to be gold. All those are the Trump colors.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
So okay, so you mentioned you mentioned Minneapolis, Minnesota, and all this kind of stuff. This is definitely kind of this wild powder keg situation. The left has really stirred things up a lot. A lot of misinformation going on out there that is fomented protests all around the country, anti-ICE protests. I saw a friend of mine who just issued his family newsletter, and his son-in-law and his daughter. He says they were in Utah. They live in Utah. And they proudly participated in an anti-ICE rally. And I'm thinking, like, you people are just like off your rocker right now because you've just been so swept up in all this. I am not here to defend everything ICE has done. I have some qualms about some of the things that they've done. I think it's a good idea that Tom Holman come in and try to reset this thing a little bit, and then move Bovino, out of the area at this point in time, and just get everybody kind of normalized a little bit as much as possible. But you have to do something. One of the questions with immigration at this point is that how much more are we going to do on immigration? We have really squeezed a lot out of this. All right, I mean, we have reduced illegal immigration to a trickle. It's
Right. I mean, there's three aspects of border policy, right? There's what you do at the border itself, to guard the border, so to speak. What do you do with the people who get here, and what do you do with the people you want to be here, the H-1Bs and so forth, right? So, yes, at the border, the success is comprehensive, right? I think it's been 6 months since anybody got into the U.S. at the southern border. So, that part you can kind of, you just keep things like they are. It's relatively, it's just a success he can point to. There's no news cameras down there showing the quiet border, so to speak, right? He can just keep saying, "Hey, we've done this perfectly, right? This worked perfectly, just like we said it would." As for the people here, I think that he is selling short the popularity of getting the thugs out of the country, right? I think that that's what MAGA voted for, and the independents who voted with MAGA voted for is get the bad guys out of the country. Okay, so I think that if I'm them, I am making these local governments the bad guys, right? I am saying we would love, all we want to do is get heinous, dangerous child rapists out of the country, right? Are you against that? Well, no, I'm not really against that because like I do these things on Facebook and whatnot, and you can see the responses, right? And the responses are, well, I mean, no one's saying that we shouldn't get heinous, dangerous people out of the country. Okay, good. If no one's saying that, then let's do that over and over and over. And let's stop local police from getting in the way of it, which is what the case is in Minneapolis. I mean, they're not, they have ordered the police chief not to help, right? And to deliberately not help. And if they're in trouble, they're in some, like the other night, they were in some building and attackers, I guess it was a hotel, attackers came and, local police should show up and say, okay, attackers, go home, right? Or deal with them however they will, right? But they don't. They did, they're like, no, those guys are on their own. If those people get in that hotel and beat them senseless or kill them, we'll just clean up the mess. They're not worried about stopping that at all. They're not worried about helping these federal law enforcement guys at all. And I guess you saw this morning a police official, the head of the St. Paul Police Union. He's like, we should be helping these guys. We wouldn't have all these problems. These people wouldn't be getting shot. We would be having all these riots. Like, and I'm not saying, and he's like, I'm not saying change the sanctuary city policy. I'm not saying change what we think about illegal immigrants. I'm saying help them get the truly bad guys out of the country, because if the cops and, help with crowd control, if they're getting attacked by the crowd, then, local cops can stand there and say, hey, don't attack, form that little barrier around them so they can do what they got to do. Right. But these are people, these are multi-offense violent criminals that they're looking for, and like the poor guy, and you don't, the media tells you the part that makes Trump look bad, but they don't tell you the other part. Like, you remember they had the old man they dragged out of the house in his skivvies, right? You remember that? He had like a blanket over him and he was in his underwear. Oh, this is his old man in his underwear. Okay. Well, he refused to identify himself. Yeah, he was. He did end up being a U.S. citizen, and it ended up being legal for him to be here. But this guy is living with two people who are serial sex offenders, right? That's who they were there looking for. They weren't looking for the old man. They were looking for two serial sex offenders with final orders of deportation or removal, right? So, they're not looking. There's no more adjudication to go, right? These guys have been found guilty, found that responsible for what they're doing, ordered out of the country, right? And this guy has them living in his house. Okay, so the cops go there and, oh, it's terrible. Why are you harassing these people? Well, these are terrible people, and if you don't harass them, they're going to be molesting your kids, right? That's what these guys are, right? And they're Laotian. Minnesota brought in a bunch of Somalis. They also brought in a bunch of people from Laos and Cambodia. And they look at sex with kids differently than we do. Like, we say that as a gross, verboten, terrible, awful thing. And they're like, got to learn somewhere or whatever, So, that's who we're dealing with. And, if you don't want America to be a place where we shrug our shoulders at child molesting, then, these guys got to go, right? They're the ones that will bring that to the U.S. So, I think that he was on the right path to do that. And the guy got in trouble. And all these people who've gotten in trouble and all these unjust cases that you hear about, they either refused to do what the cop asked for, or they went into where the cops were working and got in the way, right? It's all of them fit into those two rubrics.
Yeah, look, I mean, they have a right to protest. Okay, that's that's just part of what we allow in this country. But you need to cooperate with with law enforcement officials. You don't block their way. You don't refuse to cooperate. This is what gets you into trouble. Then and this is this, unfortunately, sometimes it leads to a loss of life because confrontations occur. Stuff happens in a split second, and they are reacting to protecting their own life and all kinds of things, and you get all kinds of stuff coming out about this. But you need the full cooperation of law enforcement, as you mentioned. Police in Minneapolis, they're told not to cooperate with the federal officials, so it leads to a lot of problems. Now, the thing too is that when we do need to get rid of the violent offenders, and by and large, the Trump administration has been doing that. There is a point of diminishing returns on this because not everybody who's crossed the border is a violent offender, right? And so you go and you go and identify those and you get those, but this does not mean that that every single person out there is. You should not label every single person out there as someone like that. And so, I think you need to, at least the first round should be focused on those with criminal offenses and get those down. And then you can look at those that are also have overstayed their visas and whatnot, or came in here illegally. You can work on that.
That's what they're doing. They're prioritizing the criminals, and the other people get sucked up into it because they're either in the wrong place at the wrong time, or they themselves make trouble. Like the old man in his skivvies, he was just in the wrong place at the wrong time. But why are you living with two serial sex offenders? What is going on there? So, but leaving all that aside, what happens is, their objective is to go after the worst of the worst. But what happens is all these other people get in the way, and so they end up dealing with them too. So if you want to keep your arrests down, you want to not have all your people thrown in jail, in the sanctuary city policy, work with them to the extent they need to get the worst of the worst out, because if Minneapolis did this, it would be, Houston, they're doing 10 times the volume every day, right? Half of all the ICE arrests in the country are in Texas. Now, why don't we have all these riots, all these people shooting and stuff in Texas? Because in Texas, the cops work with them. They just hand them the people, right? Bad guy, take him, get him out of here. Why is that so hard for Minnesota to grasp?
Yeah, look at the people running the state of Minnesota and
right?
the city of
Exactly.
Minneapolis.
They're This is an insurrection.
Yeah,
this is an actual insurrection. They're actually trying to curb the federal writ, right? Your federal law does not apply here because we just don't like it. Well, that's not the way it works. You go to Washington, you get the law changed. That's, okay, then we'll live by the new law. But right now, the law is if you're here illegally, they can take you out. It doesn't matter what other crimes you did or how hardworking you are or whatever. If you don't want the law enforced at that level, which is what you're talking about, why are we messing with people that aren't messing with us? Then hand us the bad guys, right? And then we will focus on the bad guys, and our pipeline of people to get out of the country will be full of legit bad guys. And we won't care about the guy who's just, cooking at the local restaurant or whatever.
Yeah. And, when ICE has completed their main task, they should just move on, and go to the next area or wherever they need to be.
Right. You're just there for people who have a lot of bad guys that need to be removed. And once we get the hump and the market down, then it's just routine activity. ICE should not be there for routine activity.
Right. Yeah. Well, the left loves to stir the pot, and so the Democrats think they've got another issue here. I mean, they'll look, for 2026 elections. They're like, okay, we've got affordability, now we've got ICE, but that on the ICE protests, that's a slippery slope for them.
Oh yeah.
They have to be very careful about how they deal with that, because that can backfire on them. I mean,
yeah, what happened in '68 when they went full protest?
Yeah,
they lost.
Yes, I mean, if you can go the Bernie Sanders AOC route on this, but that could be your doom and destruction. I mean, the Democrats are facing a lot of a hard path to victory in 2026 anyway in a lot of cases.
They really are.
And then you add this, and if they make a misstep here, that could hurt them a lot. So I mean, and if you're the Democrat Party anyway, you're just trying to figure out. It's like, what is the issue that's going to resonate in November? Is this going to resonate in November? I really don't think so.
I don't really think so either.
Yeah, I don't think this is it. So I wouldn't spend a lot of time and money on this if I'm the Democrats trying to make this an issue. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't know if you've ever seen this David Trone commercial, but that appears a lot, and he has variations of this one. He has several different ones, but he's got one about how he stood up to Donald Trump, and then he has a thing about the ICE protests, and he says, and the Democrats in Congress, and he's got like crickets chirping, and says, I stood up to Donald Trump, and I'll stand up to him again. And I'm like, so I'm not sure exactly what you think. I mean, in Maryland it might sell, but it's like, I don't see the point of this commercial.
Yeah. So for people who don't know, David Trone is a Democrat who was in Congress. He ran for Senate and lost. So now he's trying to get back in Congress. He's trying to represent the far western district of Maryland, and he's also the owner of Total Wine, the CEO of Total Wine, which is many of you have seen. But yeah, it doesn't really make sense. I think I just hate Trump. I don't know how effective that one's going to be this time either. Because it's like they've been running on just hatred of Trump. Just, I will hate Trump more than my opponent. It's like, do we care about that anymore? I don't really think so.
What about the House Democrats that are threatening now to say, we want to impeach Kristi Noem?
They don't have the votes. It's just talk. There's a couple of Republicans too, I guess, but for what? I mean, the thing about the impeachment is, what are you going to impeach her for? Because this guy got shot the other day. Like, she wasn't there. She had nothing to do with that. Right? It don't say these guys aren't trained. They're trained. They know what most of them are military or police. So they've already been trained by the military, the police before they even got this job. So, they're not going to they're not going to impeach. No, they don't have anything to impeach her for.
Yeah, I mean, I think she's safe, and I think she still has, the confidence of the president at this stage.
Right. The
And like,
Trump told them to pound sand
yeah,
yesterday. The people
yeah.
are talking about getting her
I,
fired.
I,
So
I think just like I said before, I think the bringing in Tom Holman just kind of changes the whole perspective of how they're going to decide to handle this at this point in time. And I
yeah, I
think
think that okay, people look at that as a swipe at Noem, and that's why kind of this noise is
yeah,
up about impeaching her. But this is not something that a cabinet level person should be handling. You're running a law enforcement operation. Just who's in charge of running law enforcement operations for us? Tom Holman, right?
yeah,
Same guy was in charge of it for Obama.
yeah. So I think that'll quiet some of these things down there, and
Better
you know
too. I think
take
it'll
take
get to be we'll get down to a practical. The people of Minnesota, it's kind of at their advantage now. The leadership there to okay, take your bad guys and go. We'll say we drove you out. You'll say we got all we needed to get. We'll both have a little high ground out of it, and we'll just move on.
I also saw a story where the illustrious mayor of New York praised the anti-ICE protesters when they took over a Hilton hotel lobby in New York, and I'm like, wait a minute, it's like that's not public property.
Right. That's not your, like how if you're trying to locate a business there, well, the mayor will let us get routed by protesters. He will not send cops to help us. He will be proud of the people who ruin our business. Like, why would you build a business there? Right.
Yeah.
Government has exactly one legit focus. That's to protect our property. Right. Like, you have your house there in Gaithersburg. I can't just come sleep in your bed and tell you to go elsewhere tonight because, you own that property. You have paperwork that says you own it. And you call the cops like, what is he doing here sleeping in my bed? Can you get this guy out of here? The cops will take me out because their job is to protect your property, not you. Right. 2A is for you to protect you. Right. You can carry a gun. Anybody does anything to you, blow their head off. Right. That's your protection as far as the government. That's not our job. We'll get there when we can, but it's your responsibility to protect you. But your property and the rights that attend to your property, that is what government is actually supposed to protect.
Yeah, I mean, and this is a disgraceful action on the part of the mayor to allow this to happen. I mean, does this mean
cheer
that?
it on. I mean, come on.
Yeah, I mean, this doesn't mean that any kind of protest in New York. I mean, if these protesters want to go into a hotel lobby and disrupt business, it's too cold outside, so we got to go where it's warm. We'll just take over a hotel lobby and disrupt their business, and and then scare away their customers. That's what in the world is going on here? But this is New York voted for this guy,
right?
So they got to live with this. So
hopefully,
do
you want? The other question is, so do you want Hilton or whoever to say, okay, New York's not going to help us. We're going to protect ourselves. We're going to have a bunch of big security guards in there, and if you screw up, you're going to be in worse shape than the ICE people in Minneapolis. No.
Yeah, right. I mean, yeah. If I'm Hilton, if the mayor is going to react like this, I am hiring the security company that can bring in the biggest, beefiest,
right.
Security guys, and I am
Smack
posting them.
heads.
I'm posting them at my door, and I'm saying like, if you're not a hotel guest or can't prove that you have business in the hotel, you do not get in. It's ridiculous to have to do that. But if the city and the mayor are not going to protect them, if he's not going to send some of New York's finest to keep these protesters out of the hotel where they have no business, then I think they have, the hotel, franchisee has every right to defend their property and protect that from damage and everything else, business disruption. So this is a shameful act on the part of Zoran Mandami. I mean, this is just these are things that never occurred to me could happen, and then it happens, and you're like, oh well, now it's like opening a can of worms. New York has got a gazillion hotels.
That's right.
This is a disaster. and he doesn't. He thinks it's great. He thinks it's great. What
Yeah.
an idiot. All right. So we also the other part of this issue that relates actually to DHS and the whole ICE thing is that we're just a few days away here, a couple of days away from the government shutdown. Now, I guess it would be a partial shutdown, really pertaining to the fight now is over funding for what defense and DHS and things like this. So that's why you have a lot of calls for defunding DHS and defunding ICE and things like that. Um,
Okay.
they yeah, right, and they need, but they need to push this over the goal line here, and kick that can down the road again. Which is basically what they were planning on doing anyway. But I thought as of a week ago they had the framework of getting things done so that they would government would operate without a hiccup. We might have one this weekend, but I don't know. I mean, it's there's the Republicans and Democrats are still haggling over some things, but the loud lefty Democrats are definitely howling about DHS.
A big part of me says defund away, right? I remember when the DHS was formed. People don't know this. It's the youngest cabinet department. It was formed out of the 9/11. It was after that. It was part of the Patriot Act. So we make this new thing. And I remember at one point, I think they've streamlined this some, but at one point there were 88 congressional committees that had jurisdiction over some piece of DHS. So it's always just been everybody threw their stuff in a big pile, right? And which makes it hard to administer and hard to ensure that they're hitting all their marks. They're doing everything they're supposed to do. One of the things that Democrats have jumped on about this is like, you're only training these guys 47 days. It's like, most of them are trained anyway, so it's not a big deal. But I mean, if you're taking, young men, strong, amped up young men, and you're giving them 47 days of training and you're putting them out there, you're risking your reputation, right? You have a chance of things going wrong as they sometimes have out there. And, the other thing is like, so you have all these guys, right? And they're under so much pressure, right? Because they're trying to arrest really difficult people to arrest, and the people are fighting back. And all the while you're doing it, you have people following you around in vehicles and blocking you in and blowing whistles and force protecting the people who are doing the arresting is a big preoccupation of these things, right? So so you're ending up, you're taking these guys who have not been trained sufficiently in some cases, and you're putting in this higher pressure situation over and over for hours and hours every day. And so you're starting to see clips where, they tell people to screw off and whatever, right? I guess one of them told them, shut up or we'll shut you up or something like that, right? So there's all kind of little videos now. Look at this fascist talking mean to the people. It's like, well, this fascist has been getting provoked nonstop for 8 hours, and he let off a little steam. But the thing about it is, you can't let off that steam, right? The people expect, it's like I talk about this all the time. I used to ref basketball all the time, and I would do 10, 12 games in a day sometimes. And you come up to that 9th game of the day, right? You've been there since 8 o'clock in the morning, and it's 5 o'clock at night, and throw the ball up, But the thing about it is, like on Monday afternoon, the kids in that game, they asked their mom, when's our game Saturday? Well, we play Saturday at 5 o'clock. Okay. That kid went and circled 5 o'clock, and he counted how many hours it is from Monday to Saturday at 5 o'clock. And he's been ticking off the hours every day because he can hardly wait to play in that game. So I can't treat that game like it's my 9th game of the day. I got to treat that game like that's the only game that I've ever reffed, right? And I've got to get it right because it is, to him, the only game I've ever reffed. He doesn't know. He wasn't there at 8 in the morning when I was doing it. So the point is, we've got to be right. The government's got to be right about this every time, right? They must be something and zero. They cannot tolerate any mistakes or running the mouth or whatever from these officers. And to the extent that's starting to happen, Holman or whoever needs to get in front of it.
Yeah, as you say, I mean, it's something. This is cabinet, this is a department that was formed after 9/11. Nobody was going to complain about that after we had been attacked. Thousands of Americans had been killed and whatnot. But here we are, what,
25 years
25 years
later.
later. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I am always skeptical from the get-go of when you start creating more cabinet, and more of these things. Our position as Republicans, or at least as conservatives, is just, small government.
Right.
Can we do more with us? And and what is DHS has just become this huge monolithic thing.
It's throw everything in the kitchen sink. It's the kitchen sink department.
Yeah. So this is not an ideal streamlined government agency or department at all.
It's completely unwieldy, and a lot of their goals are almost at odds with each other.
Yeah.
So I definitely think they wanted to fund it. I'm not sure I'm going to run up there and fight about that.
Well, I mean, I understand that point. I understand. I mean, it's like, look, if you want to start getting them to be a little more efficient, start cutting some of that budget, and and force them to be more efficient. I mean, why didn't Doge go more into this and look at this? But why would DHS have to be any more sacrosanct than anything else around here? It's like our government, our federal government,
Doge can go look at it right now. It get you some good answers in a week.
Yeah, I mean, this is still part of the problem. Our government is still too large, even though Trump has done, a good job of, taking a whack at it. But this is a multi-pronged, multi-year kind of a thing like this. I mean, we need another 8 years of, GOP control, of the House, Senate, and the presidency to be able to maybe make a bigger dent and really reform government,
right?
Down the line. So. Yeah, we'll have to wait and see how that goes. This is in your neck of the woods. I saw this morning where there was a judge that pushed back on, rejected this Virginia redistricting plan.
Yeah.
I don't know if that holds or will hold, but at least it slows the Democrats down at this point in time. You're in Virginia. I mean, what's the read here right now?
The read is not enough notice, right? You're trying to do this. It's too late for this cycle, basically, is what they're saying. You didn't go through it's a constitutional amendment. It has to be a constitutional amendment, and they didn't go through the process right, and they haven't allowed enough time. A lot of times things that the body politic wants, the judicial finds a way to give them. And that could well be the case here. I think it's a temporary victory. It may hold, but it's in big danger of not holding.
Yeah, I mean, the judge cited something like 4 procedural type of errors or something like that. So, I mean, I don't know how easily fixable that is, and given the timeline that we're at, it's just these kinds of things. That's why this mid-districting stuff, I just really hate the whole thing to begin with, and it just creates a lot of uncertainty and just a big mess across the country. It doesn't really do either. Doesn't do us any good at this point in time, in my opinion. But
my thing is, like, if Calais v. Louisiana comes out like we think it will, given the questioning, the way the court questioned the lawyers, that's the case where whether you should have congressional districts rigged so black people will win them, right? They're challenging the set aside district, so to speak. And if they win that, then that's probably 12 to 18 seats for Republicans, right? So, and can we change all that now, right? Can we redistrict? So my thinking is, if they really do that, then, you could pass a bill that says, let's do them all, AI, put all the voter data into a big computer program, and you spit out where the lines should be, right? Because we don't have to weight it for the color of the residents and all that kind of stuff. Then, the computer ought to be able to figure out, here's where 700,000 people live. Here's another 700,000. Here's another, and make contiguous districts, right? No political advantage to anybody. Just the districts are blobs that hook together. They're not There's no like North Carolina, I-85. You had a congressional district here and one here, and I-85 between them. And for that period, that 40 miles or whatever, the only thing in that congressional district was I-85. On either side of it was in another district. So like you can't have screwball stuff like that. And so you would get a contiguous districts that the members themselves could manage better, because you're all in one area. When you're home in your district, you're not going 200 miles out of the way to see people in your district and so forth. So it could have a lot of advantages, and I think you have a chance for like a double kill shot there.
Yeah, and that's what I've been proposing for a long time, is just do this. It's basically a computer generated type of thing. It's colorblind. It just keeps everything together. We don't get the wacky things that we get. I think in New York they're trying to they're trying to redistrict on Staten Island, where Maliotakis is her seat, which would just be just another, and look, I mean, Westmore, Maryland has one congressional seat, and they still want to redistrict. It's like, Are you kidding me?
Yeah. In Virginia, it's only it's 3, and they think they can get it down to 1.
Yeah, it's just this is nuts. So it's like, look, if you really want fairness, if you're Eric Holder, if you really want fairness, push for this AI solution. You can have you can have a bipartisan or independent committee to review the AI, to make sure that came out right, because AI is not perfect, but it will give you a lot of information, and you can kind of fix some of the errors in there, but you can't. But but you wouldn't be able to say tinker. You've got to take that, and if it's a little off, you fix it. But you're not going to take this area and then attach it to that area and then say that's a district. Forget it. This is just nonsense. For what we have in this country, and that's I've been trying to do this. I remember when with Spencer, I talked about years ago. I said, we just need some kind of way of just running something, and this was before AI, of trying to figure out how do we get this so that we can just run up some kind of program going through the entire country and come up with, we know how many districts every state gets based on population, run that through and figure it out. And before AI, it would have been much harder. AI, I think, gives you a huge advantage of actually crunching those numbers and giving you something that you can work with. So, more power to that. All right. We got to head around the bend here. Also, another Virginia thing I want to ask you about, Glenn Youngkin. Any thoughts about what he does next?
I think he'll be running for Senate in 2 years. Mark, not John, comes up, but I think that he is beatable, as beatable as anybody in the Senate.
Yeah,
he has really made a much of an impression as a senator. He's lightly tied to some scandals that could, grow if he's running for office again. And, a good, strong opponent with statewide ID could take him out. So that's where I think it's going. I could be wrong, because he's executive. A lot of times executives don't want to get into the Senate because, like you're used to telling people what to do, and these people don't do what you tell them at all.
Yeah, it's hard. It really, I think it is. I think it's hard for people who've been executives, who have been the boss of X number of people, to then think about running for Senate, where they're now, they're one person in a bigger pond, and now they have to negotiate these things, and they really don't. They have a limited amount of power. And they get a lot of grief in a lot of areas.
It's a seniority game, and you're 40 years behind.
Yeah. So it's hard. I think Republicans in Arizona are still waiting for Governor Ducey to run, because I think he'd be a formidable candidate in Arizona against Democrats. But the more time that goes by, the less likely it's. There was talk in Maryland about Larry Hogan running for governor again, but I think he's trying to say, I'm done. He might run for Senate again, but I don't think he wants to run for governor again. That was a lot on his plate. But I think he has ambitions where, I think with Hogan, I still think he has some presidential ambitions. If you have presidential ambitions, not that Hogan has a chance, then the Senate is not a bad place to have as part of your stepping stone.
That's right.
For that.
Yeah, it's a
So
good platform for that, and maybe
yeah,
that's will draw Youngkin is
right, right. That's if that's what he wants to do. So I've been watching the price of precious metals and what they call the debasement trade and the falling dollar. So I heard gold this morning top $5,300. So so it's got gold is in, silver is in, and a lot of other precious metals are in, and it's just amazing to see. Even even if the dollar strengthens, I think you just have we're going to see it. We'll see a floor on gold, but it won't be $1,000. It'll be $3,000 or $4,000. I think just like a lot of things, the levels have changed. The ball game has changed. Silver, I'm still not quite sure, but gold. People love to buy gold, and when you have Costco selling gold bars, it has now become a mainstream thing.
Right. It's kind of crossed over into a different kind of marketing.
It has, yeah.
And people are like, it's an investment, and it's a pretty solid investment most of the time, and it's not vicissitudes of the market. But there is something going on here. People are overrating, I think, the chaos, right? And they like, oh, America's never going to be what it was, and we're going to have to deal with whole different stuff. And America's got a way of kind of keeping everything in the fences. So stuff looks wild, but we've been through all this before, and we'll do it again.
Yeah, it's not like the dollar hasn't fallen before and gone back. That is there's a long history of the dollar, just like other currencies that float, like that they go up, they go down based on certain conditions. And so, sometimes it juices the stock market, sometimes it sends it in the other direction. You never know. I mean, it's just, now I'm sitting here thinking, like, how many years ago? 30 years ago, 35 years ago, whatever it was, 40 years, I sold a few gold coins that had Krugerrands and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
I think I might have gotten a few $100s per Krugerrand. It's like, how much money did I just cost myself?
Yeah.
Oh, well, live. That's the way life is, right?
That's right.
Sometimes you make the right decision, and later, 40 years later, like, I probably should have held on.
Probably should have done.
Though I'd have to look and see what the rate of inflation was compared to. It's like, how much would I have been ahead? I mean, how much was this? I mean, it's a pretty big increase, but then again, there are stocks that I think that have done that kind of volume. I mean, they've gone from that, they've more than increased eightfold or whatever. So anyway, all right, and then last, just as I threw this on here only because we have one in about 7 or 8 miles, maybe 6 miles away from my home, which is an Amazon Fresh store, which had been built out of an Office Depot, never opened initially, didn't open, and it sat empty for like a year, and then they opened it. And my wife and I have gone a few times, though we haven't been for months and months and months. And then the news said yesterday that Amazon is shutting down all their Amazon Fresh stores. So the Amazon Fresh stores are there. They're trying to compete with grocery stores, below, not the Whole Foods, which they own, which is a little more highbrow, but they're trying to compete with your everyday grocery store and have lower prices. So they have a bunch of those. And then they're convenient in the sense that if you have an Amazon return, you can go there, make an Amazon return. They also do grocery orders. If you have a grocery order, you order something, and go pick it up at Amazon Fresh. And then they have a concept called Amazon Go, which there are only about 15 of those. There are about 57 Fresh and 15 Go stores. There used to be a Go store, I think, in Montgomery Mall, and they closed that a few years ago. And I went in there one time, and I'm like, I don't see the advantage here. I don't get it. It doesn't do anything for me. And they closed that store. So they're shutting down these retail operations. So Amazon's still trying to figure out how to compete,
how to leverage that delivery network and all that.
Their online business is just doing great. But they're still really desperate to have bricks and mortar. And I mean, Whole Foods they bought. They want to learn the grocery business, and it's there, but it's not great for them. It hasn't really paid off for them.
Right. Grocery business is tough. People don't realize it's like you spend billions and billions of dollars to make 1 or 2% profit.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of people, and you got to have this elaborate distribution network, right, to get all the different things you need. I mean, it takes a lot of money to run it, and it's not all that profitable. So, we have to have them. They're never going out of business. But, for a business that approaches things like Amazon does, that's an odd fit, right? Amazon usually establishes that something will be profitable before they sink a lot of resources into it. Here they've kind of taken a chance on making something profitable that nobody gets wildly rich off of, right? If you look at the grocery industry, there's Izzy Cohen or whatever, he made out okay, but like 90% of the people who've made giant groceries what it is did not get rich off of it, at all.
Yeah. So, when Amazon started their fresh store, I mean, part of the thing is that they had the scanning technology so that as soon as you took something off the shelf, in essence, it put it in your cart so that, it put it just basically, and then when you left the store, because you were signing into your Amazon account, it basically charged your account and you never had to see a checker or anybody else. So then they discontinued that. They have apparently had some issue or whatever. So they dropped that. And then they introduced these carts, which that could do basically the same thing. So the grocery cart itself you could scan and record everything you're buying, and you could walk out the store and whatnot. I never tried that one. I signed in, and then when we left, we just used the self checkout and just boop boop boop, and then it knew says you want to charge this card. I said yep, and then I walk out. It was just. There were more workers in the store collecting orders for people who wanted to pick them up than there were customers walking in and walking out with product. So, and I mean, Gaithersburg is a decent area. I mean, they should have more business as a grocery store. The area they were in, is right by where the old Best Buy was and Home Depot and all this kind of stuff. I mean, it's right there. I mean, it's a good area, and it doesn't have a grocery store really close by. It's kind of in between. It's a good position for that, but it's the wrong concept. And their prices really weren't that competitive. So, it's just something that didn't work. So I know Amazon's got a ton of money. They're going to continue to throw more money at this and try to figure this out. But, they own the online space for the most part. Stick to your knitting. I mean, how much money do you really need to throw at this? It's really not necessary. People are not clamoring because I want an Amazon store.
Right. That's right.
I'm certainly not.
And if you talk to these CEOs who failed, like what mistake would you go back to and not do? And they're all like, we were in business X and we started looking at stuff in some other industry where we really weren't experts, but we thought we could apply what we had to them, and it didn't work. Like I've heard that story over and over and over from CEOs. Like you're right. Stick to your knitting. You're so good at the one of the number one things people want. Just do that over and over and make the money.
Yep. All right, we are done. Thanks everyone for joining us today. Hope you enjoyed it. Please, as always, stay safe and stay well and stay warm. It's pretty cold out there these days. Remember, we live in the greatest country in the world. Do not let anyone tell you otherwise. And as always, God bless America, and we will see you again next week.